Hi, and welcome to the rise and fall part of my life, the first rise and fall, I should say. There's another one coming. This is part 2 of my story. Oh look, I'm posh now. If you click up there, you can subscribe to my channel. See, I put a little box there. That's a massive help to me. I've got a big big announcement, big thing, big launch coming on January 12th. So you won't want to miss it. So click that if you aren't already clicked there. And if you are already clicked there, hi friends. You know what this channel is all about. And I'm on part 2 of my story now. So we got to the bit where my career was taking off. I'd taken my singing, terrible singing, off my pop music, and I just left the instrumental tracks that suddenly became popular in the clubbing scene in London in the mid-90s. And my drug use was increasing and increasing, especially because I was now involved in club music and DJ culture. Drugs just doubled by then, I would say. And it just so happened that a lot of the people that were going to those clubs were directing commercials. They were young commercial directors, and they started using the music that they'd heard in a club, my music, in their commercials. And people would say, "It's very cinematic, your music." And I'd go, "Really? Is it?" I didn't know what cinematic meant. And so one of those directors was the son of a guy called Ridley Scott, who did Alien, Blade Runner, legendary director. And he just got his first film. And he said, "Do you want to just do the music for the film with this guy that does orchestra music?" Never worked with an orchestra before. And that was my first film that I scored. Nobody saw the film. The film didn't do well, but people really took notice of the music because it was modern day music that I was making, club music set against action from like the Middle Ages. So it was all the reviews mentioned the music. So I started to get noticed by the film industry, and drugs increasing. So off the back of that, I get offered the chance to work on a film called Moulin Rouge. I don't know if you know it. So off I go to Australia in my early 20s and start working on the Elephant Love medley in Moulin Rouge. It's the first thing I did in a big film. So then, obviously that gets a lot of notice, and then the guy that does the James Bond film says, "Do you want to work on some James Bond films with me?" And I was like, yes, I would like to. Around this time I also had a band with a woman that I got married to. And we got married mainly she was Polish and she was about to get deported back to Poland because she overstayed her visa, and we had this band. So we got married out of convenience, I would say, but we really liked each other and we were in love. So I got married around the time of doing the James Bond films, but I was beginning to get out of control. My drugs were beginning to spin me into... But that time I started drinking heavily, and the alcohol is when I started to become a horrible person. Like I would just say horrible things and I would do horrible things and not remember. It's so out of character for me. Like I'm not a horrible person, but the alcohol would bring this out of me. So my friends started leaving. My friends started going, "What? Well, that's it. You've had enough. We've had enough of you. You're behaving super bizarre." I was making out with friends' girlfriends, and it was horrendous. Like friends I'd known for years. Whilst being married, it was horrible. It was horrible, and I feel very ashamed of myself for that. But I was in my mid to late 20s, and I would lose cars. Literally, I would come into the studio and not remember where my car was, and I'd be, "Where's my car?" And it would be like halfway down the street in the middle of the road. Like stuff like that started to happen, and I think that was alcohol that sped that up. But the career was going great, so I was like, well, I can keep doing this because the career's fine, so I can keep doing the drugs and alcohol. The only problem is people don't like me anymore. That's all right. I'm married, I've got my wife, it's okay. I can isolate myself. The James Bond films led on to me getting a call to say, do you want to do this film with Julia Roberts and Brad Pitt called Ocean's 11 with this DJ guy? And yes, I said. So I came out to LA, and just before Oceans, the guy that was doing the Bond film said, I'm working on a tiny little film. Ben Stiller's directing it. Do you want to just pop in for like a week or two and help me with the music? Because they fired the original composer and we've only got a couple of weeks. That film was called Zoolander. So I did Zoolander while I was waiting to start Ocean's 11. It was, crazy. Autism. All thanks to autism. Special interest. So things were really going insanely well in my career. And the drugs and the drinking had started to really, the wheels had started to come off. I felt like I was going insane, and I had a nervous breakdown in the middle of, after Ocean's 11, we did a film called Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, that George Clooney directed, and halfway through that I had a nervous breakdown, and I didn't know what was going on. I thought I'd lost my mind. I ran into an emergency room in LA and I said, I'm going crazy, what do I do? And the guy said, how much do you drink? How much drugs do you take? And I halved it because I was too embarrassed to tell him. And he goes, wow, you've got to pull that back. And that was an eye-opener. So he gave me a big sedative, and while I was waiting for the sedative, they put me in the children's ward in the Sesame Street part. And I remember sitting there, looking at Elmo and the Cookie Monster on a tiny little chair, going, this is going to be my life now. I'm going to be sitting on a tiny chair with stuffed animals because I've gone insane. So the sedative kind of worked. A week later, I had the same thing again, complete nervous breakdown. And I called a psychiatrist, crying. It's like, I need your help, I don't know what to do. He said, come and see me, but I can only see you next week. Between now and next week, I want you to just limit your drinking to 1 or 2. I'd never tried that, and I thought, that's fine. I couldn't do it. It was hell. Having one drink was just like, my body was like, another drink. And then if I didn't have any drink, I was just shaking. So it was a horrendous time. And weirdly, I was doing this movie, like this George Clooney movie, while all this was going on. And I was like, no one can know. So the wheels finally came off when I finished that film, and I ended up moving in with a girl. I don't remember who she was. I don't remember how we met. When I came back to London, I moved to a different house, and I don't remember most of it. This makes me sound horrendous, but I'm telling you this to show you what addiction can do. So I end up in this house not knowing what's going on. The psychiatrist gave me these psychiatric drugs, and he said, don't drink on these. And I heard that as, drink on these, this is going to be fun. But that made me lose weeks. I was literally losing weeks. I literally don't remember how I ended up in this house. My wife eventually, we reconciled, and she said, in Poland, you can get this implant under your skin, and they cut you open in the back here and put this implant in. It stops heroin and alcohol working, both of which I was doing for 6 months. So I thought, that's great. That's brilliant. I'm 6 months off alcohol and heroin working. It's going to be amazing. That's all I need. So off we went to Poland. I get this surgery done. Really painful. I think they didn't put the anesthetic as part of the thing, part of the ritual of it to scare you. And the doctor, when he'd done it, said, if you drink within 6 months of having this, you're going to die. And I remember going, wow, so I've got 6 months off. There's no way I'm going to drink. He just told me I'm going to die. 3 days later, I was drinking again. That's the power of addiction. That's how powerful it was in me. Someone told me if you put a gun to an alcoholic's head and a glass of whiskey in front of an alcoholic, they'll say, I wonder if I can drink that whiskey before the bullet goes into my brain. And that's how I felt around that time. That was me. So typical addicts, I go back to the doctor, say, you haven't put enough of that stuff in, I need more. He put more in. I was drinking the same day. I was found in the middle of a suburb of Warsaw. I'd been horrendously beaten up. Loads of cracked ribs. Trigger warning. This is horrible. I'm really squeamish, and I can't think that I would ever have done this. But apparently I tried to pull this thing out, and it was implanted, and I've still got the scar. Still got the scar to prove it. So they took me into what I thought was like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It was like proper insane ward of people, and I couldn't speak Polish, so I didn't know what was going on, and I was restrained to the bed, and they were giving me like injections and stuff. It was insane. It was a horror show. I recently found out that it was just an alcohol ward. They were all addicts like me, no different. I managed to get hold of a phone 3 days in, and I called my mum and dad, and everyone was frantic, and my mum and dad did a great trick. They said, we've spent all our money for you to go to rehab, and if you don't go, we don't get the money back. So I was like, wow, I've got to go. I wonder how long I have to be in there before I can start drinking and using again. So off I go to rehab for the first time. And in rehab, I don't remember much because it was a blur, but I do remember, get a sponsor. And when I came out of rehab, because I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic, the minute I got home, I went out to use drugs, went out to my dealer's house. Something on that trip went, just try a meeting. Those guys who have been telling you to try a meeting in that rehab, just try it. And I realized how sad and pathetic my life had got before I'd gone into treatment. It was so small and pathetic and dull and depressing and just black and white. And I was doing these incredible things. Where was I? I was at Ocean's 11. But I think we'd done Ocean's 12 by then as well. So everything was going well, but I wasn't enjoying anything. My life was pathetic, even though I was doing these incredible films. I wasn't finding any joy. So I went to a meeting, and I sat down next to a guy, and I said, I'm just about to go and take drugs. I've been in rehab. Can you help me? And he said, yeah, I haven't had a drink or a drug for 10 years. And I was like, whoa. And he said to me, I've said this in many videos because it really stuck with me. He said, you never have to drink or use again a day in your life, and you could have a life beyond your wildest dreams. And I thought, wow, that sounds good. And I said, what do I do? He said, come and see me every Wednesday. We're going to go through the 12 steps. Because I was desperate. Because I didn't want to go back to that life. I did what he said. I went to see him every Wednesday. And we went through the 12 steps, and my life became amazing. Everything that was, all the fear I talked about in part 1, for the most part had got way lower, and I was really involved in the program. I was sponsoring people, and I started to get serenity, and my life started to get color again. Remember I said it was black and white? It started to get in color, and then I was enjoying these films, and we did... the first film after that was a film called The Good German, with George Clooney again, Steven Soderbergh. And I remember coming out to LA and doing that and feeling really good. I had a little blip. Very famous actress gave me a line of cocaine. And I thought, I'm never going to get the chance to do this again. Very famous actress. And I did it. So I had to reset my time. It wasn't worth it. I felt shit the next day. I only had like 6 months then. I had to start again. I told my sponsor about it. So I'd crashed and burnt with drugs and alcohol, but my music career had taken off massively. After The Good German, we did Ocean's 13. And then I did another Bond film. You can see it all on IMDb. So my life became colour again. I started to enjoy my life. But me and my wife at that time, because I'd changed so much, and we got drunk with me high, lots of people, when they are in a relationship like that, when the person gets sober, they tend to not have, because I was a different person, so we started to drift like that, which was sad, really sad. She's an amazing person, great artist, and I really regret the way I treated her and the way it didn't work out, because I changed and she always wanted me to change, and when I did change, we weren't compatible anymore. So also the guys that I was doing the Oceans for, the guys that I was doing all my films with, apart from the Bond films, were very heavy drinkers and drug takers, and they were really good friends. They were like really close friends, and one of the guys was the best man at my wedding and stuff, and they started to drift away because I wasn't drinking it anymore and I wasn't involved in the social side, and I felt like me not drinking was triggering them. They took it like it was a comment on them. So they disappeared. So I ended up without any friends in London, and the marriage had gone wrong. And I'd heard that Hans Zimmer, the biggest composer in Hollywood, had wanted to work with me a couple of years before, and that hadn't worked out. And I thought, I'm going to call him. So I was producing an artist called Badly Drawn Boy. If you're in England, you'll know him. In the middle of that session, I'll never forget it, something in me said, this is going to change your life. This is going to be a life-changing thing. Something told me that, and another part of me said, this is going to be a hellish thing for you. And I didn't listen to this voice, I just listened to the positive voice. I called up. I knew I was going to do a film in the next 3 weeks, and I knew I was going to be there, and I arranged to meet Hans Zimmer. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Part 3 is going to be Laura, Hans Zimmer, relapse, ruining my life for the first time. So come back on Monday, because I'm not. You might have noticed in the banner, I'm doing videos every weekday now because I'm preparing for my January the 12th thing. So I might go live at the weekend. I'll let you know if I'm going to, because I sometimes like to do a piano live. But I love you guys. Part 3 on Monday.